Coby White absolutely filling it up at the Sonny Parker Unity Classic. We're going to talk about that. We're going to ask the question. This is based off an article from Beach Report. Is P. Will still the young player with the highest ceiling on the Chicago Bulls? And is he still the most promising young player? We're also going to talk about the Bulls officially signing Terry Taylor, and the NBA in-season tournament drops today. We're getting into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Haize, but you can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the content for today. And first up, Coby White absolutely cooked at the Sonny Parker Unity Classic, dropping between 49 and 51 points. Apparently, there's some question there on what the actual number of points that he dropped. But, we're going to overlay the video here if Coby White absolutely cooking. He just showed everything, step backs, taking players off dribbles, everything. Now, I do want to be clear here. Nobody is saying by any stretch of the imagination that because Coby did this at a pro-am, it means that he's going to be able to do this at the NBA level. Much like I said, when it comes to Patrick Williams, when it comes to Dalen Terry, when it comes to anybody cooking at a pro-am, it is what it is, right? You want to see your player absolutely perform against non-NBA level talent, right? It would be a bigger sign if like Coby got locked up by somebody there. So the fact it's just fun to see, right? And Coby, we know that confidence was a big part of his game going to the next level last season. And so, seeing him come in with the confidence and just being able to just flash the moves that he flashed, right? It was major, right? As far as like just seeing the skill set there. Now, can he do that at the NBA level? That's the biggest question there, right? Is he going to be able to come in with that level of poise, aggression, and things like that and find a monochrome of that success at the NBA level? That remains to be seen. We'll see how Coby comes into preseason. We'll see how Coby performs, during the preseason games, going into the regular season, things like that. But, while we've having the conversation, and we had a video last week after a question by a listener asking, could Patrick Williams realistically win Most Improved Player of the Year? Here's what I'll say is that when it comes to Coby White, especially if he ends up being the sixth man off the bench, right? If he ends up being that first guard off the bench, he absolutely could win an award next season. Now, I don't know if he's going to do enough to win Most Improved Player or Sixth Man of the Year. We both have to win as a team for that to happen. But don't be surprised if Coby White turns some heads next season. The biggest question is he's shown so much growth defensively last season. He showed so much growth in his decision-making, both on the offense and defensive side. That weak side defense has been growing over the last couple of seasons also. And so if he adds in that scoring punch and ability that we've seen Coby White to have in flashes, if he adds that and is consistent with that, right? And by that, I don't mean that Coby White needs to have this 18 point per game output every single night, right? But if he gives you consistently 15 to 16 points every night coming off the bench with decent efficiency, right? Decent efficiency. He doesn't even have to be 50, 40, 90 or anything like that, but with decent efficiency, Coby White absolutely can get into some of those conversations. The biggest thing is, even outside of that, not even worried about the stats, impacting the team. And I think that Coby, more so than any other time in his career, understands how he can positively impact the game for the Chicago Bulls, right? So that's something that we're going to look at. We're going to see, continue to monitor. Shout out for Coby for going out there and dropping a 50 piece, right? You got to give him credit for that. But, let's see how he performs on the NBA level before we get too much into it, right? But with that being said, with, Coby White kind of being the topic there, the next question that I want to go to is asking, like, is Pete Will still the young player on the Chicago Bulls with the most potential and promise, right? And by that, again, I mean, when I'm talking about young players, I mean like sub 24 years old, right? That's kind of the key part of what we're saying in. That would include Coby White, Ayo Dosunmu, Patrick Williams, Julian Phillips, Dalen Terry, right? Again, I know Terry Taylor's only 23 years old, but I don't think that anybody's really kind of arguing the upside that Terry Taylor has as a player, right? I think we pretty much know that, Terry Taylor is a guy he's going to be an energy guy, right? And the guy that can definitely come out, and we'll talk about Terry in a minute, but like, is Patrick Williams still there? Now, in this article from Bleach Report, they point out the fact that Patrick Williams was in the 77th percentile as far as defensive estimated plus minus, right? And so that's a metric that is used by a lot of NBA teams when they're putting their team together in front offices, when they're looking at value added by a player. You also look at Patrick Williams' career 41.4 career three-point shooting percentage. That would have him top 25 all time via this article if he qualified for that. Again, I don't think anybody's expecting Patrick Williams to keep up a 41% career three-point shooting percentage. If he does, hey, listen, that's dangerous. Now, Patrick Williams, as a 3-and-D player, and while some Bulls fans, and I see you guys in the comments, like to say, oh, get rid of Patrick Williams, he's nothing, he's not. No, Patrick Williams has already shown that he's going to be, at the bare minimum, a 3-and-D player at the NBA level, and that can have you as a career starter, right? The biggest question with Patrick Williams is that, are you going to give that consistent level of effort, that focus, right? And, the aggression part of it, but do you have the intelligence then on how you go about your points? And even in this article, they talk about with more opportunity, even kind of projecting out what Patrick Williams has already done, it shows pretty well that Patrick Williams can be a pretty solid starter at the NBA level. Maybe not hit that superstar potential, but he still could, right? But the question that I want to ask and bring here is that, is Patrick Williams still the player that many Bulls fans look at with the highest potential on the team, right? We all know that if Patrick Williams makes a leap, how that changes things for the Chicago Bulls team, right? But I am starting to get to the point to where, again, this is not a slight on Patrick Williams, because I still do think, and I've been very consistent on the channel with saying Patrick Williams is not the finished product yet, and I don't think the Bulls should give up on him anytime soon. He is going to get a second contract with the Chicago Bulls, and he's going to be here through whatever the next version of the Chicago Bulls roster does start to shape up and look like. The biggest question is, what is his place in that roster, right? And so we have other young players here. You have Dalen Terry, who we really haven't gotten to see much at the NBA level. I know a lot of people are trying to write him off due to a bad summer league, right? And the lack of development that they've seen from him as well. You have Ayo Dosunmu, who a lot of Bulls fans have already tried to write off as just a player that, it doesn't matter after one solid rookie season and a questionable sophomore season. And then you still have Julian Phillips, which is the rookie this year. Way too early to say really too much on Julian Phillips. We probably won't know what we have in him realistically on a Billy Donovan coach team for probably about another 2 years, right? But ultimately, is Patrick Williams still that young player with the highest potential and upside, right? And here's what I'll say. That I think right now, yes, you can still say that Patrick Williams has that highest ceiling. But I tell you what, Coby isn't that too far off his heels. And I think that with the way that Coby White has grown defensively and the scoring punch that he's already shown, and I tell you what, one thing we don't really worry about with Coby White is his reluctance to take shots, right? Like we've seen it. Even when Coby isn't hitting his shot, he's still going to shoot. And if he can make that a more consistent part of his game and be more efficient with that, and with the defensive potential that he's shown, I mean, it starts getting into like apples and oranges, I guess, in a way. But like I'm starting to think and kind of still look at, Coby's a little older, right? Don't get me wrong on that. He absolutely is. But I'm still kind of looking at them maybe as like they're closer than what I looked at before. Going into last season, I would have said clearly Patrick Williams has the highest ceiling. And like I said before, I'm not necessarily saying he doesn't, but I do think that every year that goes by and we don't see that next level of any type of, well, in specific areas with Patrick Williams, that Coby White is closing that gap some. So, and we'll see, if Dalen does come in and with that defense and energy and getting out in transition, what does he show this year, right? With Julian Phillips as well. So, we'll end up seeing that, but I think Patrick Williams is still the right answer there, but that doesn't mean it's going to stay the right answer, if you get my drift. Let me know what you guys think on that. Now, next up, we dropped an emergency video after the Bulls officially signed Terry Taylor to their final roster spot, their main roster spot, unless they decide to go ahead and waive Carlik Jones. Carlik does have an option on his contract to where I think it's up to October 16th, I think is when it is, when they can remove his contract with no penalty, look to sign another veteran minimum player. But until that happens, the Bulls' 15-man roster seems set. Now, Terry Taylor isn't going to get a lot of minutes on this Bulls team, at least we hope not, right? Hopefully, we would have to go way far down on the depth chart before we get to Terry Taylor. But now that Bulls 15-man roster is really set, we can start trying to, take a look at like what the roles are going to be, which we've already said. I've kind of already picked the Bulls 9 to 10-man roster, rotation spots on here, and with the players that are going to be fighting over that. But with Terry Taylor, they do add somebody in who can come in and rebound the ball, right? He's going to come in and be a dog rebounding wise, if nothing else, right? And you need that rebound. If you're getting killed on the boards and you need somebody who's going to come in and get you a couple of extra possessions, Terry Taylor is a pretty good bet on that, right? Now, again, I don't think that this is necessarily a bad signing. It's an underwhelming one, right? Especially because some Bulls fans had the hopes for Kelly Oubre Jr. and Christian Watson. But now we get to pivot and talk about what that play style is now going to be for the Chicago Bulls. And I think it really kind of stays the same. I still think that this team specifically, well, especially for the players coming off the bench, will benefit from being a team that rebounds the ball well, fights for rebounds, gets turnovers, gets deflections, and gets out in transition. I think that that's going to be the most beneficial play style for this Chicago Bulls team, and specifically that second unit. Now, we know in basketball, it's not hockey lineups. You're not switching the whole lineups out there. You're going to stagger it and have different players out there, but I still think when you look at it, right, Javon Carter is a player that can play in either more of an up-tempo or slow down half-court offense, right? He's not going to do a lot of half-court facilitating for you. But then when you look at Zach LaVine, definitely benefits from being more a more faster-paced team. And again, like I've said before, I'm not saying a team that should just run and run, but like if you're getting rebounds defensively, if you're forcing turnovers defensively, those type of things, you want to get out in transition. Alex Caruso is another player like that. Patrick Williams, I think, can benefit from that as well. Yeah, he's not the quickest laterally, but hey, I've seen him in person. The guy can move forward and back. And then you look at Andre Drummond's another player that benefits from that. Dalen Terry with not having, the shooting prowess. Ayo Dosunmu, who also benefits from that. So you get to a place where now, because of the roster that we have, right, and it's another smaller roster with not a lot of shot blocking on it. Now, again, the reason why I said shot blocking instead of rim protection is because there's two forms of rim protection. You can protect the rim by playing good enough on-ball defense that your opponents can't get to the rim. And I think that's what the Bulls are going to try to do here. Better point of attack defense. But ultimately, you have to now ask yourself, once again, is Billy Donovan going to have the play style necessary to get the most out of this version of the roster? I have my doubts there, right? I have my doubts around Billy Donovan. I have my doubts around him being able to adjust his system to kind of match the personnel that he has and try to get the most out of it. I think Billy is going to still rely heavily DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, with the little Nikola Vucevic sprinkled in there, and then everybody else take the open three-point shots that come in this offense. And that is one thing that Billy Donovan's offense does create consistently is open three-point shots for the role players. Hopefully we have role players that are going to hit him at a more consistent clip this upcoming season. But, I ultimately, with what the Bulls have done now with this roster, they have a fairly young core and team. Yes, they added two veterans. Well, Javon Carter is still, 26 years old. They added Torrey Craig, who's well older than that. They brought back Vooch. They brought back Coby. They brought back Ayo. And so, we now have a situation in which we now know what that roster is going to be, right? We can now start thinking that all the thoughts on a Christian Wood or anybody else, all that's gone, right? I guess theoretically there's still going to be Bulls fans that say, well, we can waive Carlik, so you're telling me there's still a chance? Even though I've always been adamant with the Bulls weren't going to go after those players. I never really saw that. And if those players even do kind of take a veteran minimum, it's going to be for a team like Miami after they trade for Dame Lillard, right? We've already started hearing those rumblings now that Christian Wood could actually be interested in joining the Miami Heat. It's like, no shit. Haize called that 2 months ago. So shout out to Haize on that one. But, so coming down to it is just this, right? AK has set the roster. AK now we know what it's going to be. Outside the off chance that Carlik is waived and we go out after another veteran signing, which at that point, is it going to be Javonte Green, who, shout out to Javonte. It just seems, and I saw a lot of you guys ask yesterday as well, after the Terry Taylor episode dropped, what does this mean for Javonte Green? Well, I think that Javonte's injury is way more serious than what we were realizing. I think that injury with his knee is really what kept him from signing with the team. And it's unfortunately, it's probably not going to be with the Chicago Bulls again. They could waive Carlik and bring Javonte in, a guy who's their guy, has more size, can play more positions than Carlik can for sure. But, we'll ultimately see with that. I don't really expect much out of that with this Bulls team, but, I've been surprised before. But that's really where we're set. The 15-man roster is now set. It's up to Billy Donovan to get the most out this roster, and hopefully that this roster can forge that identity that we were looking for so much last season, right? Hopefully they can get that team identity. Hopefully they can bring that around. And, I have my concerns as well with this team. It's not by any stretch of the imagination this amazing roster that was built that you now look at and say, oh, this is going to be a team that can get out the first round. This is still going to be a team that the sum of the parts are going to have to come together to provide more value than what the parts do individually. We're going to have to see the role players hopefully filling the gaps between the core three a little bit better than what we did last season, right? All those things still maintain and hold true. And I think it does still put a highlight on what Billy Donovan is able to get out of this roster. And I know a lot of Bulls fans are going to say, well, this isn't the most impressive roster. How can you expect to coach? Well, that's what coaching is for. That is the difference that coaching makes for teams, right? It takes a team that maybe doesn't look the best on paper and creates a well-oiled machine out of. That is the importance of coaching at the NBA level. And so we'll see what Billy Donovan can get. It's not all on him. Let me be clear here. Regardless of the Bulls' success, failures, whatever it is, it's not all on Billy Donovan. It's a mixture between the roster. It's a mixture between Billy Donovan, and it's a lot of the front office as well, building this roster and not really having the aggressive moves that we would like to see. But like I said over in the Terry Taylor video, this team was right up against the luxury tax. We were $1.8 million below the luxury tax. And I had no expectations realistically of this team going into the luxury tax. This team is going to have to prove that they can fight and compete. This team is going to have to forge that identity and become that scrappy team that punches above their weight before we can even talk about this team going into the luxury tax. And even then, right, DeMar DeRozan's contract's coming up. They can do something with Lonzo Ball's contract with exceptions, things like that, to still get and have some flexibility while still maintaining under the luxury tax. And as long as that's a possibility, you have to know as a Bulls fan, especially if you're a long-term one, that this team ain't paying the luxury tax. It ain't happening. We can make a conversation and argument for it all day. Probably ain't happening. So we'll see what happens with this team overall. Like I said before, a healthy Zach LaVine to start the season, having your point guard to start the season now as well, growth from Coby White, hopefully growth from Patrick Williams, to see what we have in Dalen Terry, Julian Phillips. Hopefully that starts increasing kind of our view on the Chicago Bulls. But again, that's a tall test to ask for faith from Bulls fans from an organization that hasn't done much to earn back the trust and faith from their team. Now, before we go, we do want to also talk about today. The in-season tournament schedule drops at 3 p.m. Eastern time today. So we will be discussing that on tomorrow's show, how that looks for the Bulls team. I think, like I said before, had the midseason tournament been a thing last season, the Bulls would have went in as the number one seed based off their record against the teams that are in our group. Now we're going to see if the Bulls can benefit from that and play well again next season. But I really what are you guys' views on the in-season tournament? Like, I really would like to hear from you guys between now and the voicemails this weekend, really seeing how you guys feel about this in-season tournament. I'm still really bullish on it. Like, I'm really up and down on it. I don't really have like this amazing feeling on it one way or another. It kind of just is what it is in a lot of ways to me. Like, it just, I'm going to watch it, right? And I'm sure the games are going to be cool to watch and see. And I like that they're doing it in Vegas, right? That they're actually stopping and doing it in Vegas. But like, it's a mess situation for me. But I'll be interested to hear how you guys feel. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for our mailbag episodes, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related because of you guys. And like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See Red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.